And welcome to the A to Z Sports Big Orange Podcast. I am Charlie Burris, here as always with my co-host, A to Z Sports Tennessee writer, Zach Ragan. Wherever you listen throughout the world, we thank you so much for listening to us. Zach and I talk everything Vols every week here on the Big Orange Podcast. If you want to listen to that on the regular, make sure you go over to the A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed on Apple, Spotify, and subscribe there so you don't miss an episode when we drop them on Mondays. And I keep forgetting to throw this in at the beginning. Not going to forget this week. We're getting 1% better. As the great Butch Jones used to say, get 1% better every day. YouTube. Go to the YouTube and subscribe there. A to Z Sports. Just seek out A to Z Sports on YouTube and subscribe. And then the episodes and clips from the episodes drop there also. At Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT, at A to Z Sports, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville, and A to Z Sports.com for all the stuff that we write on the internet. Well, Zach, let's get down to brass tacks. This show, let's be completely honest with the folks, the good folks that listen to this show. We are actually coordinating with Tennessee football. I'm pulling back the curtain, but I think we should be honest with everybody who listens to this show, because they are, they're so gracious giving their time and listening. We are coordinating with Tennessee football to make sure that we record when Tennessee football recruits commit. We approached Tennessee and we said, hey, we would love to do this. We can get the word out when Tennessee has recruits that commit, to the folks that listen, and we'll do that. And Tennessee was so gracious. They said, sure, that sounds great. And so every time we record now, a recruit just commits to Tennessee, and it's a lot of fun, and we get to talk about it. And today there was another one. Did you see this, Zach? In reality, yet another recruit committed to Tennessee right before we started to record. This is crazy.
It's really crazy is the fact that he committed when we would normally be recording. We pushed back an hour today from our normal time. So
you didn't get the memo, but
yeah, I think we might have dropped the ball on that. Maybe we didn't pass along that information. It was kind of a late change this morning to our recording time. But yeah, I mean, I feel like we're owed some gratitude from Tennessee fans, because I feel like we're doing our part. You got the NIL stuff that they have to coordinate with Tennessee, which recruits you want to pay. Then we kind of coordinate with them as well on commitment times and when that's going to happen. And Monday's been the day so far this past couple of months.
Contrary to what I just said, that was just a joke. We're not actually coordinating with Tennessee, unfortunately. I wish we were, because honestly, Tennessee at this point, cut the boys a check. We need the help. I got to put food on the table. Zach's got a kid to care for. We got needs. Tennessee, we're helping you out here. Hello, somebody.
Throw some of that NIL money over here.
Exactly. We can get this dude set up with an $8 million deal, and he can't throw us a few shekels when we're on here, promoting every time.
Allegedly $8 million.
Yeah, allegedly setting up an $8 million deal. That's true. The asterisk. I'm sorry. Actually, now Tennessee, they're probably offended. I have offended them by not saying allegedly. I apologize. Well, anywho, Andre Turrentine. I don't know why I thought Aaron. Andre Turrentine, he is a DB from Ohio State, commits to Tennessee 5 minutes before we get on here. And this one, just to wrap that up in a bow, this really is it 4 out of the last 6 weeks we've had a recruit, either on the day we record, while we record. Check me on that, but it is something close to that. 4 out of the last 7. I don't know what it is. But we are really on a roll as far as whatever it is. Yeah, on Mondays when we record, this is when they do it. I think we're really kind of exposing their like pattern. This is when they like to have recruits commit, I guess. I don't know.
I think that the 2 weeks that we didn't have a commitment on the day of or when we were recording was when we did it on Tuesdays the past 2 weeks because of travel and other things going on. So, yeah, there is something to that.
There really might be. I don't know if they're like, oh, well, Tennessee fans, we all know everybody's having a tough Monday. You're getting back into the work grind, so we're going to give you a lift, get a recruit here for Tennessee. I'm not sure what it is, or it is just purely coincidence, but just for some reason we do appreciate it. But actually, last week we did miss it by about 2 hours or whatever it might have been. There was a commit right after we recorded last week, and so they whatever it is, they like these Mondays, Tuesdays, and this in particular, this pickup with the transfer Turrentine from Ohio State. He is a Nashville guy, a Tennessee-based guy. He was did you say he was the number 4 recruit from the state of Tennessee in the class of 2021?
Yes.
In the 2021 class, he was recruited by Pruitt back then. And Pruitt whiffed, and and Turrentine went to Ohio State. And now Heupel, after we actually had the discussion, Heupel locked down the number 1 player in the state of Tennessee for the class of 2023. Now he's kind of going back in time and correcting the mistakes of Jeremy Pruitt and saying, well, Pruitt couldn't get this kid, so I'm going to get this kid. And he's bringing him back. This young man redshirted at Ohio State, and now Tennessee at a position that I would say it might be the biggest position of need on this entire team. He's bringing in a guy that Tennessee arguably should have had anyway. This is a great pickup, despite the ridiculousness of them always committing during our show. This is awesome. I love this.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, it's the biggest position of need for Tennessee. When you look at the transfer portal and what they needed to add, it's all about defense, especially the secondary. And then you add in that he's a Tennessee kid from Nashville. That just makes it even better. We're talking about Pruitt and whiffing on this guy. Tennessee was in his top 4 when he committed to Ohio State, signed with Ohio State in December of 2020, just before Pruitt was fired. I believe it was LSU and Alabama, maybe, that were the other teams. Yes, LSU and Alabama were the other teams he was considering. Pruitt only got 1 kid out of the top 10 players in the state of Tennessee in the 2021 class. You had players go to Clemson, Notre Dame, Michigan, UNC, Turrentine went to Ohio State, TCU, Georgia, and Virginia Tech. Also running back to Virginia Tech out of Chattanooga. It really just shows how much Pruitt kind of ignored in-state recruiting. I mean, we kind of saw it. He signed a lot of 3-star players from Alabama. I mean, that was kind of like his go-to. It was like the Alabama and Auburn rejects were kind of like what Pruitt built his class around. I don't know if he was just more comfortable in that territory because that was his backyard. It's where he spent most of his career and his life, or if he just didn't like the talent in Tennessee. Did he have something? Did he not think he could win with players from Tennessee? I don't know what the deal was, because Pruitt, even by means that weren't legal, he recruited well at times at Tennessee, but it's like he ignored keeping the players in state. It made no sense. You cannot win at Tennessee if you don't land the best talent in the state. You just can't. I mean, you have to. It's cliche, but you got to put the fence up around the borders and keep those guys in state. Heupel's kind of starting to do that now as Tennessee's gaining some momentum on the recruiting trail, and then to go back and get this guy, which I'm sure a lot of other programs would have loved to have had, but to bring him to Tennessee and to fill a need, I mean, that's massive for Tennessee.
Yeah, I said it even back when he was still the coach. Pruitt didn't want to be at Tennessee. He didn't care. Was always an Alabama guy. Always, I think at best, his goal was to be a coach and then eventually get back to Alabama. Thankfully for him, he blew all of that up completely, and now he really can't go back to college football at all. He could go back to high school football, So congrats on that whole thing.
We still haven't heard
But
what his next move is. I know they had the coaching change with the Giants where he spent last year, but there's still an Alabama connection there since it's Brian Dable. I think him and
yeah,
Pruitt were at Alabama at the same time, so I don't know if they'll retain him. And there's a bunch of Alabama guys up there anyway. Kevin Scherer, I believe, was up there. Freddie Kitchens was up there, so maybe they might keep all those kind of off-field guys there. But we haven't heard really anything out of Pruitt since the season ended.
yeah, he's definitely laying low across the board. He's kind of made that his MO since everything went down with Tennessee. Can't say I blame him. But
Still waiting on that strongly worded letter or lawsuit, whatever that he threatened Tennessee with. It was supposed to be by the end of last October, wasn't it? That
it's almost like
they tried to extort Tennessee basically by saying we're going to go scorched earth on you if you don't pay us, and Tennessee just ignored it and nothing happened.
It's almost like he didn't have a leg to stand on. Tennessee called his bluff.
Yeah, almost.
Wow.
Good call, Danny White, for not calling the bluff and not giving in to his demands.
Yes,
I can respect that.
Don't negotiate with coaching terrorists. That's a good words to live by as far as Danny White goes. But outside of that, he never wanted to be at Tennessee, Pruitt. And so we've already talked about it kind of at length on this show. He really burned some bridges with recruiting in the state of Tennessee, even with coaches. You talk to some high school coaches here, and they just say that he, ignored them, was a jerk, blah, blah, blah.
It's the same thing as what Derek Dooley did, right? I mean, he's another Alabama guy that those same stories were coming out. I remember the stories about the Chattanooga area, how they talked about how Dooley didn't even really visit those areas at all, just was non-existent. At least with Butch Jones, he wanted to be at Tennessee. Not because it was Tennessee, but it was a big job with lots of attention, a big salary. And he kind of embraced going after the in-state guys. I mean, he understood at least that you needed to do that. But the Pruitt and Dooley, they didn't have any use for players from Tennessee, it seemed like.
And it's no surprise that they were the two worst coaches of the last 15 years. I don't think that's a coincidence at all when you look at that. It's a type of job where you have to be completely comprehensive. There's nothing in being a college football coach that can be ignored, really. You can't just be like, oh, well, I'll get kids from another state, and it doesn't really matter if I get these in-state guys. You can't do that. That's not – you can't just ignore parts of this job that are requirements just because you feel like you could do something else. And like, that's just not – that's why these guys get paid huge sums of money. It's why they never – see their families. Like, they're always working around the clock 24/7. It is a completely encompassing job. And because of stuff like this, you have to keep high school coaches on the line and keep good relationships with all those peoples and kind of be shaking hands, kissing babies like that. It's a whole subset of this job. And if you don't like it, get out. That's not really anybody's problem but yours.
Did Pruitt ever look happy to you when he was there?
Yeah, no.
It's very telling, right? Like, you can't hide that. Like, Heupel looks happy. I mean, there's times he's annoyed, of course, after a loss or a bad practice, whatever. That's just your person. That's what you have to deal with on a day-to-day basis. For the most part, you hear him talk, and the guy seems genuinely just happy. He cannot stop. I've listened to. He's done a lot of media over the past few weeks. I've listened to a ton of interviews with Josh Heupel. The one thing that he says in almost every single interview is he talks about the town of Knoxville and what an incredible place it is to live. Like, that is his big talking point. And it's really not even a recruiting thing. It's just, he just kind of brings it up out of nowhere. He just loves the city. And that's, you can't fake that.
You can't. And he did. I think it was in that Bussin' with the Boys interview that we talked about last week. Great interview. I think he did mention, I don't want to mischaracterize it. I'd have to play it to remember exactly how he said it, but he did. He kind of phrased it like he was surprised that Knoxville was like a great town to live in. Like, he said something like, I actually love it. Like, it's a really great place to live. You could tell he was being genuine about it. And I know some people might get kind of offended by that, but being like, hey, why didn't you think it was going to be great to start with? But like, you have to be completely honest. It's a college town in East Tennessee. I think a lot of people, unless you visit here, I travel a decent amount, and you talk to people outside of the Southeast, and you say, oh, I'm from Knoxville, Tennessee. And they go, oh, is that close to Nashville? Like, that's the entire reference point for the state of Tennessee, if you're not like familiar with it. And of course he has lived in the Southeast, but he still, was even at his time in the SEC, he was at Missouri, and his total exposure would have been coming to games in Knoxville. He wouldn't have been coming here, hanging out, seeing what it's like.
They go from the hotel to the field, and that's pretty much it.
Exactly. He didn't experience it. So
I don't think that comment was anything negative.
No, it wasn't. I
mean,
I don't think
he didn't have a negative perception ahead of time of Knoxville. I think he was just probably assuming it'd be like every other college town he's been.
Exactly.
Just like nothing special. It's just gonna be another college town, whatever.
I
think that's what he meant.
I stand by this wholeheartedly. Obviously, I'm very biased. I'm a lifelong citizen of Knoxville, Tennessee. What can I say? But I really do stand by this. I've been to almost every other town in the SEC. Haven't been to like Columbia, Missouri, because who cares? I might say that, and actually going to Columbia might be nice. I don't know. I'm putting onto them what I don't want other people to put onto Knoxville. But it's just the town that I haven't been. I haven't been to Fayetteville. I don't know, but I've been to most of them. And Knoxville is different. At a baseline, it's larger than most other SEC towns outside of Nashville with Vandy. But of course, is Vandy even Nashville's
count? It doesn't count.
Yeah. Vandy is really just, they're the team of that one small part of Nashville that they take up, and that's about it. And so it's bigger than most other college towns. It's just more kind of commerce. We sit on I-40, and you have the Smoky Mountains, which is a big tourist destination, and everything like that. And I think a lot of people don't realize that. And I got from that comment exactly what you're saying. He didn't think that it was going to be bad at all, but he was surprised by how good it is.
Yeah.
And it's specifically that gratefulness. That's what you see. Pruitt was never grateful to be at this job. He didn't appreciate anything about it. He didn't say, I can't believe somebody is paying my dumb ass to coach, they're giving me $4 million to come in and coach this team. There was none of that. He came in and thought he was going to turn Tennessee into Alabama, and that was his goal. You talk to anybody that was in the facility at that time, he really did see it through that lens. I'm not like projecting that. He wanted it to be Saban's Alabama transplanted to Tennessee, and that was never going to happen, and that was stupid, and he was never grateful to actually be here. He didn't like it. He didn't want to be here.
He got out immediately. He did not stick around. Butch's family lived here, like 3-4 years after?
Yeah.
It just recently sold the house. I mean, Danny White bought it, right? Danny White bought Butch's old house. Is that
real?
That went down. I think that's real.
Maybe.
Am I imagining that?
I don't remember that happening, but that's a funny thing if it did.
I'm
if
pretty
that is what happened.
sure.
But
yes.
I remember his house selling, I think.
It got 3.8 million. He bought it in like May of 2021. So a few months after he was hired.
That's funny.
Yeah.
And that is, let's be clear, a $4 million house in Knoxville, Tennessee is a palatial estate. That is a very
I remember looking
house.
Through the photos of it whenever it was listed for sale.
Yeah, it's not. We're not New York City where all that'll get you is like 1,000 square feet. You can get a farm and a huge house for that much money. But that's funny. I didn't know that. The interesting little tidbit there. But bottom line being, this is just another great sign for Heupel. I'm uncomfortable with how much nice stuff I have to say about Josh Heupel.
Me too.
I seriously, I'm the cynic. I'm the guy that's going to come on here and nitpick the little things that I see, and I go, I like this guy, but XXX. You know, like with Heupel, the thing that I nitpick is I like this guy a lot. His coaching style, I love the offense, but his aggressiveness, I think it can win you games and it can lose you games. Like that's my biggest knock on him. But like with Pruitt, you could hit this guy 10 ways from Sunday with the stuff that he was doing. It was clear he was flailing around, didn't really know what he was doing. We said a lot of, I remember we said a lot of, well, he's learning on the job.
Mm-hmm.
He'll get there. He'll get there. We're not saying that. With Josh Heupel, he's going out. He's making the in-state connections with recruiting. He's repairing the mistakes that Pruitt made. He's recruiting to a defense that sorely needs players, and he's recruiting what looks like, you know, a former 5-star, great in-state player, and just really doing things that, like I said, I'm almost uncomfortable with how much good stuff I'm saying, because I kind of, as always with Tennessee, I go like, where's the catch? When does the other shoe drop, you know? And I just good stuff keeps happening. Every time we do this show, there's a new recruit. You know, it's really been a good, productive, clean off season. Just to really, like, there hasn't been big, you know, fallout with players getting in trouble or anything. And, you know, Lord, knock on wood there. I don't want to speak that into existence, but so far, I just continue to have good things to say about Josh Heupel, and I love it. It's great. I want this to continue. Don't make me change my opinions, please. This because I enjoy saying good things.
Speaking of players getting in trouble, we should hit on this real quick just because it's fun. Not that I wish anything bad on anybody, but Alabama just got former 5-star recruit Eli Ricks, who looks to beat cornerback. Originally played at LSU, I think for 1 year maybe, and then hit the portal whenever all that went down with Ed Ogeron. Looked really good. I mean, looks like another first-round pick for LSU. He just got arrested over the weekend for no license, maybe speeding, marijuana possession, you know, stuff. Nothing major, but still, you know, you don't want to see your 5-star guy that you just got from LSU get arrested in May or April. And it's just not, you know, not ideal. And you're right. So far, Tennessee's not having to deal with that. And maybe that's, you know, like we talked about last week, a lot of that's to do with the NIL stuff, and these players understand that they can cost themselves a lot of money by not staying out of trouble.
It makes it a lot more immediate when you're making money right now. Like, it's easy to just say, oh, well, you're hurting your future paycheck that could come in the NFL.
Yeah.
Sure. But that's not like real and right in front of you, and it might not ever happen. But here, if you're getting a $25,000 deal to hawk, I don't know, crystals or whatever, then that's right now. And if you get in trouble right now, that goes away. You're done. And it really, that's a great incentive structure. We talked about it at length last week. It creates some incentives to have these guys learn fiscal responsibility and things like that. And it really is huge. I think it could be. Obviously, guys, that's always going to happen. Kids are going to be kids. We were all college students once. You're young, you're dumb. It happens. But I love that. I know there were so many people over the weekend talking about there was a recruit in Miami, or not a recruit, a player for Miami's basketball team. They just went to the Elite Eight. And a player for Miami's basketball team, he said, I'll come back or I won't transfer if you cut me the check. Give me an NIL deal and meet my threshold on an NIL deal. And it was like $600,000 or something. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. I think that it was a number like that. And he said, I won't transfer if you do that. And I'm going to transfer if you don't do that. And, you know, there were people that were panicking. This is what the NIL, we knew this was going to happen. We told you that. I'm sorry. When do we get indignant like this? When Lincoln Riley leaves for USC for however millions of dollars, when Jimbo Fisher goes to Texas A&M for $75 million to go complain on every media session he does, you know,
or Brian Kelly leaving Notre Dame while they're still fighting for a college football
exactly.
playoff spot.
Are we getting indignant over that?
Imagine if a player hit the portal right before that, like a star player. Alabama's Bryce Young hits the portal before the SEC championship game. People would be losing their minds over that. But Brian Kelly or another coach doing it's just fine. It's just business then.
I could say this. You could I think there would be validity to having conversations about putting in guardrails
Oh,
on the
of
whole
course,
thing.
yeah.
And it's sort of a salary cap situation. I always say, just make college football the semi-pro professional football that it is.
Make the
Just
offseason like the NFL, where
yeah.
all this stuff happens between February and July. Like that's it. The in season stuff does get annoying, but it is. I mean, it is what it is. But if Derrick Henry does that in the middle of the season, you're going to be frustrated, even though it is a business. It is millions of dollars. He's an employee. He has the leverage, all this stuff. Like, I understand that, but he leaves in the middle of the season. You're going to be incredibly frustrated.
Yeah, that's a different thing.
So I kind of understand people getting frustrated. Coaches, I mean, it's hard to coach when a kid can just leave in September. I have no problem with. I mean, I'm for paying them whatever they want, and however you got to do this, and for kids to be able to transfer. I've always thought that was a great idea and an important thing that they should be able to do, since coaches and anybody else can do the same thing. But I agree, there needs to be some sort of guardrails as far as managing a roster. Like, you got to make it to where a coach can manage a roster and kind of know what he's going to deal with week to week. Like that's probably the only thing that I would say.
I mean, here's the real truth about that. Not to be this, I didn't mean to go on a rant about this, but I'm trying to look. The Ed O'Bannon case, which is where Ed O'Bannon was in the NCAA video game, and he saw that and he said, "Hey, why am I not getting paid for this?" And he brings a case against the NCAA. That was the early 2000s, I think. I would have to look close to 20 years ago when that happened. And at that point, the NCAA could have said, let's just let these players get paid for being in a video game. Let's let them do it. Let's do NIL. That's what they could have said back then. And by this point, we would have had all of that worked out. You would have, because that's what's going to happen. There's going to be market corrections. There's going to have to be whatever it literally, the market correction might be the end of the NCAA and these leagues policing themselves. Who knows what form it's going to take. Mark Emmert is leaving the NCAA. That's going to be a big shakeup. This whole thing. Mark Emmert, the president of the NCAA, he's leaving. And back then they could have done that. 20 years ago, they could have said, hey, this is all the whole college sports is so huge, makes so much money now. These players, they need to be able to make money on the giant image that they are able to have at a college level with all these fans and people that would buy their merchandise, things like that. And they didn't do it. And they fought it and they fought it and they fought it and they fought it and they fought it. And then finally, all of that is just, it all built up. And now that it is allowed, you're seeing it's a pipe that was ready to burst. And it's just exploded now that the pipe has been opened up. And it's going to take time to work through all of this. Like I said, a market correction. And part of that is going to be a player coming to you and going, give me my money or I'm out of here. That's going to happen. It is. It's part of it. And you're just going to have to go from there. And so we've said it. Another thing that I really like about Josh Heupel is that he hasn't been a guy who's going out and weeping, gnashing teeth over this type of stuff. He's gone out and been like, this is the way that it is. Let's take advantage of it in the ways that we can. Let's, work with control the controllables, as Butch Jones used to say.
They fought against the natural evolution of NCAA and what it was supposed to be. They tried to keep it from evolving, and if they would have just let it happen naturally, you probably would have had this NIL stuff happen at a much earlier time, like you're saying, in the early 2000s, and it would have preceded the transfer portal, because it's the combination of these two things that have made it the Wild West right now, where you don't really know what to expect. Player can hit the portal kind of at any time, can be in situations like this. if they would have allowed the NIL to happen and then gradually went to this one-time transfer and all this, that you would have had these other safeguards that you're talking about in place already. So it would have evolved naturally and it would have been a lot smoother than the train wreck we're seeing right now. Not that, like I said, not that I'm against anything that's happening. It's just a chaos and unorganized, and they've got to figure out a way to make it more reasonable. And a lot of stuff they have in place right now doesn't even make sense. Like, you can transfer within the SEC, but only if you enter the portal before February 1st. You can transfer somewhere else as long as you do it before May 1st. I mean, that doesn't add up in any.
Who cares?
What sense does that make at all?
It didn't have to be like this. That's my entire point. If we could have already been past this, had it worked out, and been in a better place. I did look. That case was 2010, 2011. So it wasn't 20 years, but it's still been.
But he played 20 some years ago, didn't
he? He did play that long ago. And so it was a long time ago when you could have seen this coming and they could have made these changes. And that actual case that should have been the turning point at a minimum should have been the turning point. That was 12 years ago. So, it didn't have to be like this. It's beside the point. We have a bunch of other stuff to talk about on this episode. As much as I love, it's one of the things that I'm most passionate about as far as talking about college sports goes, if you can't tell. But this is good stuff from Josh Heupel. We have been a big fan of what he's done in this offseason, really liking it so far. And this is just another great pickup with this defensive player from Ohio State at a position of need. Not exactly sure, since he didn't play last year with Ohio State, you're not sure exactly where he's going to fit in at the college level. Safety, cornerback.
Plenty of opportunities.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. There's plenty.
I think he signed as a safety. I think he was kind of
okay.
Yeah, he was kind of a cornerback coming out, but people saw him as a safety. I don't know if he's a 6 foot 175. So depending on the speed, I guess he could play either one. I'm sure they'll figure out a way to fit him in. They've got plenty, like I said, plenty of opportunities in the secondary. You just lost two really good players through the NFL draft, and Alontae Taylor and Theo Jackson. So there's a lot of talent to replace.
Yeah, and we're going to talk about that. That's going to be sort of the final topic of the show. But so let's move along, and we'll come back around to talking about the draft and some things like that. But let's mention quickly. We'll make it quicker than we probably were planning on. But Tennessee baseball had another series win this weekend. They didn't sweep, but they had a series win over Auburn. Auburn is a really tough baseball team, and I was pretty impressed. They have some really good hitters, and that pitcher from Sunday was really, really solid. He did an excellent job holding Tennessee down until just finally the dam broke. And so Tennessee does walk away with a nice series win over a really tough Auburn team. But there were a couple things in that series that are extremely notable. First, and the one that would be a little more quicker in terms of a conversation, is Ben Joyce, who has gotten so much hype this whole season as just an absolute, this guy tosses fire. He just, 100 plus pitches most of the time. It's crazy. He threw the fastest recorded pitch in the history of college baseball. This team has broken so many records this season. Best start in SEC history. I think now the fastest college baseball team ever to 40 wins. I think that was something that they crossed this weekend because they're 40-4 now. Or one of the fastest to 40 wins ever. Just all of this, so many records they've broken. And now, to an individual player, the fastest recorded pitch in the history of college baseball, the second fastest pitch in professional or college baseball. Aroldis Chapman still holds the 105.8 mile per hour pitch, but Ben Joyce 105.5, and he threw 3 pitches over 105 in this game. 3 over 105. The dude is playing on another planet. At his best, he is unhittable. and he was excellent closing out that game against Auburn. Tennessee's pitching was off kind of that whole series almost, and he just came in and locked it down. Tennessee got the lead, and there was no way with Joyce in the game that they were going to give it up. And it's so crazy. 105.5. Are you kidding me?
Yeah, I mean, it's absolutely mind-blowing. And he's such an interesting player because I'm a huge baseball guy. I watch the New York Mets play every single night that they're on. I mean, it's a big part of my life. And when I look at Ben Joyce, I immediately think, how does he fit with an MLB team? Like the draft's coming up in June or July. Where does he fit? Because you don't see a lot of MLB teams just take a one inning guy. You don't see closers drafted. It's a big investment for something that's not really a sure thing. Typically, you see them converted from a starting pitcher to a relief pitcher. Well, Joyce, he was a starter at Walters State before he transferred to Tennessee. Then he had the Tommy John surgery, missed all of last 2020. Obviously, everybody missed, and then or most of the season they missed, and then 2021 he had to sit out. So he's kind of in this role coming back because of that Tommy John surgery and innings limits. I mean, you don't throw a guy out there full bore after they're coming back from a major elbow surgery that takes a year to recover from. But at the same time, you got this talent. I mean, he's throwing 104, 105 consistently, and he's locating. Like you said, when he's on, he's unhittable. I mean, that's got to be very enticing for a Major League Baseball team to want to take him just on potential alone, because he could come in and be a lockdown closer in MLB for a long time if he can continue this. He's already had the Tommy John surgery. That's something that teams are always concerned about with these high velocity pitchers. He's already went through that, so you're probably not going to have to worry about that again. So you got that kind of out of the way. He should be pretty quick to the majors after playing at community college level and at Tennessee. I'm really interested to see what happens with him because he'll almost certainly be drafted now. Whether he decides to return or not, I can't imagine he would want to return unless just he gets passed on. But that's what I think about whenever I watch him pitch is where he's going to be at the next level. And the great thing is that Tennessee fans, even like non-real baseball Tennessee fans, casual baseball fans, they're going to watch Ben Joyce because Tennessee fans follow former Tennessee players no matter what. If it's basketball, baseball, football, it doesn't matter. And this guy has become so popular. Opened up the Instagram app last night, and no lie, I should have took a video of it. There was 3 posts in a row. Pitching Ninja, a baseball account I follow, and then the MLB on Fox Instagram account. And 3 posts in a row were all Ben Joyce. I mean, who would have thought that before the season started, that Tennessee baseball would be getting that kind of national attention?
Yeah, he's an absolute phenomenon, and I love that it's just an added narrative on top of this, because if Tennessee was having like a more regular season, kind of like they had last year, they had a good season, but they lost a couple series and it was an up and down year. Like this would be a phenomenal story. Just in a year like that, they would have been like, Tennessee has this really fun closer or reliever. Like, look at what he does. But the fact that this is just piled on top of this team that's just breaking all these records and, is doing all this crazy stuff. And he doesn't play that much as relative to this team. He came in this spot. Did he play in the games of prior 2 nights? I don't think he did. And they've gone series without putting him in the game. They've swept SEC teams without employing Ben Joyce. Like it's absolutely absurd. The wealth that Tennessee has right now on the baseball field. It is 10 layers deep of just hitters and these great pitchers, and the defense is getting better. Thankfully, they were having some problems earlier in the season of just like some defensive mistakes. That has been improving week over week. Like they just really are. Joyce is just a situation of just like the rich getting richer. Tennessee would have been excellent without him, and he just makes them that much better. It's totally crazy. But beyond that, even you had yet another Tony Vitello incident in this series. Auburn cracks a home run that gives them the lead in game 2, I believe, of the series, which Auburn actually won. They take the lead, and this dude does like a bat flip to the moon. Just hits this home run, and he flips the bat, and the bat. It is, hey, you hit the home run and you took the lead. Bat flip right in our face. Tennessee would do it to you. Give it right back to us in kind. That's not the problem. But the bat flip goes all the way towards, I think unintentionally, but goes towards Tennessee's dugout straight to Tony Vitello. And you could say it like almost hits Tony Vitello. Again, it was unintentional. The guy is just, doing a flashy bat flip. And it goes towards Tony Vitello. Tony Vitello then takes the bat and kind of in anger, just pissed. His team just got rocked by a home run. He takes the bat and he throws it back at the Auburn dugout. I tried to find on Twitter a video of it, and I was having a really hard time.
Yeah, the only only really good video I've seen of it, I think, is it's like a press box video from way up above, so you can kind of see the whole field. And I think Vitello was standing at the top step of the dugout, kind of watching everything. As soon as the bat, he doesn't even hesitate. It's not like he even processed what happened. He immediately went straight to that bat and just kind of slung it back towards the Auburn bench, which, I had no real issue with. I saw a lot of takes on Twitter. I'm sure you did as well, where there was a lot of people like, well, if you're going to play that way, you gotta, if you're going to give it, you got to take it and all this. And I don't, I agree. You do. If team gives it kind of right back to you, that's what you got to take.
Part of it.
But I also I have zero issue with Vitello just kind of tossing the bat back. That's just passionate. It's just passion. Like, that's all that is. That's all that's going on in that whole exchange from both sides. So I had zero issue with the Auburn player doing it. I'm not a fan of the huge bat flips, like the really just throwing it up in the air. Like, I don't know. It's just, I like a good bat flip, but I like it just more controlled.
The only issue I had with it is that it didn't win them the game. If it was a walk-off and you do that, you just like do it like Evan Russell last year. You had a grand slam to win an NCAA tournament game.
You can do whatever you want, man.
Throw that bat into the sun. Like, I don't care what you do. But they just took the lead. Like, it was a great moment. And it was a clutch moment. The kid, it was a great hit. Okay. Credit to him. And it won Auburn the game. That's the only problem I could have with it, where you would kind of go like, okay, calm down, buddy. you didn't win the game yet. They still had a couple of innings to go. I think it was the 8th. But other than that, Tennessee just gives it out like that. If you're going to be a team with swagger, you can't be mad when teams have swagger also. Like, that just isn't. And I don't think that's what Vitello was doing. He wasn't going like, you shouldn't have thrown this bat up in the air. I think he was just going like damn it, and kind of throwing the bat back in a moment of like, we had the lead. Tennessee was up at that point. They were up 5-4, and then I believe that put Auburn up 7-4. I don't totally remember the exact situation, but I think he was just mad and was just going, frick, and he throws the bat.
Yeah.
And it was a bunch of what I really saw. It was just a bunch of opposing SEC fans that wanted something on Tony Vitello. They all do. The Vandy fans, of course, they want Vitello to get in trouble. They want Tennessee to get in trouble. They want Tennessee to get hit with whatever. So many people were suspend. He's got to be. This is out of line. This cleared the benches. Blah blah blah. Blah. Oh, shut up, dude.
It's good. That's what you want to watch.
It's entertaining.
Yes. That's the great thing about college baseball. We've talked so much about it, about how entertaining it is, how much emotion there is. You don't want to watch them just not care that Auburn's taking the lead. You don't want to see Auburn not care that they're got a chance to beat Tennessee on Saturday and then maybe take a series from Tennessee on Sunday. People, throw this term around, but Tennessee is the Super Bowl for a lot of other teams this season, right?
Yeah.
I mean, everybody wants to be the team that wins a series against them.
Exactly.
So everybody's gearing up to play Tennessee big time right now, and they're expecting confrontation. They're expecting some shenanigans from Tennessee's dugout. So yeah, you got to. There's just gonna be more of this as we proceed towards the end of the season here.
Exactly. It's just going to get worse throughout the season. And unless you're just beating a team down, I think Tennessee should expect that right back. You know, it's not like Auburn had anything to say when they were down 17-4 on Friday night.
It's hilarious is that the Auburn fans, I know you saw it on Twitter where they're kind of like celebrating that they weren't swept by Tennessee.
I did. I saw you posted somebody. Yeah. You posted an Auburn fan that said Tennessee baseball has never swept Auburn, and as if this was some sort of great accomplishment. It was like you lost.
Yeah, you lost.
You didn't win the series. You lost the series. but I mean, it's all credit to how good Tennessee is this year. When they've swept
Auburn
more than they've just won series.
Oh yeah.
I mean,
when they lose a game, it's shocking when they do lose a game. So
yeah,
maybe you should celebrate it. I don't know.
I mean, they have 2 losses in the SEC this entire season. So.
There was an Auburn reporter too that was talking about how classless Tony Vitello was. It was a rivals Auburn reporter. It wasn't even like from the school or anything. You know, you're supposed to be, in the age of Twitter, pure reporters aren't quite as objective as they used to be. In professional sports, you see more objectivity, but in college sports, we've both seen it. Some of these reporters in the press box, and Auburn is by far the worst that I've ever experienced. I don't know about you, but I remember being at the Tennessee Auburn game. I think it was when Nick Marshall was the quarterback at Auburn. It's during the Butch Jones years. And I mean, Auburn won that game against Tennessee. It was in Neyland. They won by 30-some points or something.
I was there.
It was a blowout. Okay. All I recall from that game, besides Nick Marshall doing whatever he wanted to with the football, was the Auburn media was the loudest I've ever heard in that press box. And they were clapping. There was some cheering.
Really?
Yes. Which, like that's taboo.
Against the rules.
Yeah, you don't do that.
Yeah.
It was the most uncomfortable that I've ever been in a press box, besides the time I sat behind Dan Walton, which that would make anybody uncomfortable. That's beside the point. I mean, so it wasn't a surprise to kind of see that from him, but that just shows you, like, an Auburn reporter that's losing his mind over Tony Vitello, the Tennessee baseball coach. Like, Tennessee fans, embrace this. Embrace it.
I love it.
The good times of Tennessee baseball that 15 years from now we're still going to be talking about. So just soak it all in.
This is and frankly, as far as a regular season goes, it almost literally can't get better than this. You could be 44-0. That's the only way it could get better. Instead,
I bet Tony Vitello is almost glad they're not 44-0 because of the immense pressure that would be on the team right now.
It has almost got to be a relief in some sense to have a whole series with a team where Tennessee actually got pushed.
Yeah. For sure.
Even in that first game, you were down 4-2 until the 7th inning. You were down 4-2. You were losing in that game, and then Tennessee blasted them in that game. And then you get pushed pretty hard in those final 2 games and then just squeak out the series win. I think he has to be relieved to be like, look, we are mortal. This isn't some otherworldly team that is going to beat everybody by 10 runs and like run away with a College World Series. This isn't going to be easy. I would be embracing that if I was him and kind of being like, look, guys, I know we're good, but like, let's take a breath and say, like, this isn't just going to be a cakewalk to a national championship, even though we're clearly the best team in college baseball right now.
I think Tony Vitello is one of the most self-aware coaches I think I've ever really seen in college sports. in general, I mean, he's self-deprecating at times when it's appropriate. He has a good sense of humor. You have to be that way to coach a baseball team. There's so many ups and downs over the course of the season. There's so many different personalities that you have to manage in a clubhouse. He's really like the perfect, like, if you were on a video game and had to create your own manager, it would be Tony Vitello. Like, he's exactly what you want in a baseball manager. He's quirky, but he's intense. He has a sense of humor. He strategizes. He's smart. I mean, it's the perfect coach for Tennessee. So yeah, I think he understands the positives that come out of that. I also think it's good that they lost on Saturday. Kind of the way they lost, where kind of Auburn got to put it back in Tennessee's face a little bit, and then came back on Sunday to win the series. Like, that kind of shows you how Tennessee would respond to adversity.
Yeah, and that's all the way around. I liked having this series, even though obviously it's uncomfortable compared to some of the other ones we've had. I like having that actual pressure situation. This team needs that. You need pressure situations where you actually come through to learn how you're going to do that. Because that's, Lord knows, when the College World Series rolls around, if Tennessee can make it that far,
games.
they're
Really
going to
tough
be
games.
really tough. Yeah, you might be the best team in that College World Series. It's not going to be some cakewalk. The best team in the College World Series didn't win the College World Series last year. Mississippi State was not the best team in that set of squads. So I'm loving so much everything with this Tennessee baseball team. It's appointment television. It's amazing stuff. Don't let it pass you by if you're not watching every game that they play. So with that said, we're coming up on an hour here already. We'll go a little long. We have been. I mean, we went like an hour 25 last week. So at this point, whatever. So the NFL draft happens last week. It was over the weekend. And Tennessee, I believe, had the most NFL draft picks since for the school since 2012. Am I correct in that, or did it match previous years? Because I know Butch had a couple of years with a nice amount of picks, but I want to say I saw that, but it was 5.
I'd say like the 2016 year had a decent amount with like Dobbs and Sutton and Maben, or no, 2017 draft. I mean,
I'd have to go back and look.
Had Barnett, because Barnett, that was the Barnett year. Dobbs, so Sutton, if he was drafted, Jalen Reeves Maben, I think, was drafted that year.
I mean, five is a good number.
Oh yeah, I mean that's and we were only expecting 4. Like when I did like the predictions, and I didn't look to see if I got any of those right, but I only had 4. I had Theo Jackson going undrafted. I think most people thought he was going to go undrafted.
Yeah, he actually goes to my beloved Tennessee Titans, wearing my Titans shirt right now. And so five players taken, whatever it was relative to Tennessee's history in the draft. It's better than anything Pruitt did. It's close, if not better, than most of what Butch did, and it's duly. At the end of his time there, Crazily actually had a really nice set of talent. He just was a god-awful coach. But 5 players taken. It was what did we say there? In this order: Alante Taylor, Velus Jones, Matthew Butler, Cade Mays, and then Theo Jackson were the 5 taken. Alante Taylor, 2nd round. Velus, 3rd. Matthew Butler, I think, 5th. Was Mays a 5th too?
He was 6th.
6th. And then Theo was pick 204. He was the last guy to get taken. And this is yet another thing with Heupel that I got to give him kudos on. He just keeps stacking up good stuff this offseason, and you don't win any games in the offseason. But if you're going to do it the way that Heupel has done this offseason. The recruiting has been so impressive so far. The fact that you haven't had guys get in trouble, like we said earlier in the show, all of those things like that. And then you have this, which, when you really look at the fine points of recruiting and what really gets to guys, And in the age of NIL, this might not be as powerful, but before the new NIL rules, where so much of the selling point was we're going to get you to the pros, we're going to get you to the pros, we're going to get you, you play in the NFL, you get a big contract if you come here. And it was such a huge thing to be able to say, hey, look at all of these draft picks we had. And to get Tennessee back in that pantheon of getting guys taken in the draft is massive. And on a team that had a year that was kind of better than it was supposed to be, and you're already picking up in recruiting, this is just another great talking point where Heupel can go into somebody's house, and specifically, you can go, not only did these offensive players get taken in the draft. Obviously, Velus Jones, I think, is a very impressive. Who picked Velus up? The Bears. I think that he's going to be an incredible value for them. You can say, yeah, we got the offensive players. You know that I'm an offensive guy. We can get those guys drafted, but we even got defensive players taken in the draft with Alontae Taylor. And this is what can you say? This is extremely valuable on the recruiting trail, and to getting Tennessee back to that point where you want it to be, where it's that historical, powerful brand. One of the huge pieces of that is getting guys back into the pros. So congratulations to everybody there having a draft class that was even better than what we thought it was going to be. Like you said, everybody sort of assumed it was only going to be 4 guys, and then it becomes 5. It's great. I was impressed.
Yeah, I think the best takeaway I had from it was, or the best news I thought that came out of it was Velus getting drafted in the 3rd round. Before last year, Velus was an undrafted free agent at best, just because of his speed and maybe special teams contribution. Like, he wasn't going to be drafted. And he goes and he plays. He didn't have to return to Tennessee for his final year of eligibility. He was it was his 6th year in college, I think, after his time at USC, and he had the extra COVID year. Plus, he had redshirted. I mean, he's going to be 25 later this year. So Velus he didn't. It was time for him to go, but he decided to stick around to try to raise his draft stock, and he did. I mean,
well, just a quick point. It was kind of funny. Somebody actually mentioned he's older than AJ Brown.
That's insane.
Who just signed this massive contract, and we're going to talk about that at the end of the show. I got opinions. But he's
the fact that Heupel, Josh Heupel is the reason that Velus was a 3rd round pick.
Exactly. Yeah.
I mean, obviously Velus put in the work and all that, but he plays under Jeremy Pruitt for another year. I mean, he's not going to do nothing's going to be any different than the year before when he had 200 and some receiving yards, because Tennessee's offense was terrible under Jeremy Pruitt. Josh Heupel comes in, turns this thing completely around. If he would have had Velus for 2 years, and Velus isn't almost 25, which is a reason I think he fell, because you're not going to make a 1st or 2nd round investment typically on a guy that old, because you want to get him young and on those rookie deals and all of that. He could have been a 1st round pick under Heupel. If Heupel would have had him for a couple of years early on in his career, he's definitely a higher draft pick than what we saw. But Heupel got him from what I think was the undrafted range to the 3rd round. That's, if you're a recruit, like, how do you not notice that and say, especially if you're a wide receiver, how do you not say, man, I want to go play for that guy because he's going to get me to the NFL. He got this guy that wasn't even on the draft radar drafted in the 3rd round. That could be me. And Javonte Payton signed a deal, undrafted free agent deal with the Cardinals as well. So that's another wide receiver that really, he played at Mississippi State. I didn't even know who the guy was before he transferred to Tennessee. I mean, he wasn't a household name by any means. And he had a decent year at Tennessee. He was playing behind Velus and Tillman, who were a big part of the offense, but he was incredibly efficient with his opportunities. He averaged something crazy like 22 yards a reception, which would have led the SEC, I believe, if he had enough receptions to be eligible for that stat.
The thing that I just continued to be impressed with that I didn't think I would be with Heupel. We had whole conversations about this before he showed up, was how legitimate is this as a system that he runs? Is it just a gimmick? And I think Sure. You could certainly call it that. Almost any way you slice it, it is different than anything almost anybody else does. And it is contingent on running this crazy style of offense and being super aggressive and blah 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 blah. We've had those conversations. But we talked about before he got here, like the big knock on him, even from former players that he had, was sort of like it didn't really prepare me for the NFL. And proof's in the pudding. I'm sorry. Did it not? Maybe you just weren't that good.
Yeah, maybe Drew Lock isn't a great quarterback.
Maybe. Although he was pretty good in college. But
well, I mean, as far as for the NFL, although I think Pete Carroll's going to give him a shot unless they trade for Baker Mayfield out there. But
yeah, interesting move as far as that goes. But it was just such a big thing because you had former players saying that about his system. And what more proof do you need other than he's sending kids to the league? And he has a guy at quarterback who's getting Heisman hype. And all of these things in 1 year that you can just look at and go, look, it could all fall apart. Certainly. You never know. It's Tennessee.
And we're always prepared for it to happen.
Exactly. It's Tennessee. Let's never keep that out of our mind. But, I mean, this dude continues to do things where he goes like, no, we're the real deal. We're going to go out and we're going to cut big NIL deals with these alleged NIL deals for kids. And we're going to make a big splash on the recruiting trail. And then we're going to send kids to the league. And then we're going to win more games than you thought I was going to win. And then we're going to do this and this and this. And it just add this to the list of the stuff that makes me impressed with what Heupel has done so far. And he's, I guess is this what a competent football coach does? Is this how this goes if you're actually like decent at your job? This is a question I think at this point. Are we so impressed by this because it is truly, really impressive, or are we impressed by this because Tennessee's been so bad for so long? I do have that thought in my mind. I think it is actually impressive personally, but I do think there is an element of we're so relieved that the guy is not an incompetent idiot. Like, I sort of both. I think it really can be both, but I don't know if you have thoughts on that.
I think it's both, definitely both, because I think the situation he took over was pretty disastrous, and he should not be having the success that he's having right now. I think if Josh Heupel would have went 5-7 last season, we would have all been disappointed because, I mean, I was disappointed when Butch went 5-7 in 2013, even though I saw some progress and thought better things were on the horizon. I felt the same in 2018 when Tennessee went 5-7 in Jeremy Pruitt's first year. They left some games on the table. But you understand that, like, you've got to build the program, you've got to put your spin on it, you got to change the culture, all these things that take time. And Heupel's managed to do that, just like flipped a switch and went 7-6. Could have easily been 9-4 if the Ole Miss game goes the way that the referees did not think it should go. And if Hendon Hooker starts against Pittsburgh, they're a 9-win team. They were very, very close to that. So I think it's very impressive, but then I think, like you said, it just kind of, we're so used to seeing the incompetence and just things go as badly as possible, and we're used to having to convince ourselves that things are going to get better. We had to convince ourselves after Butch Jones lost to Vanderbilt in 2013 that he was still on the right path. We had to convince ourselves after the Georgia State and BYU losses in 2019 that it was just a blip on the radar, and say, hey, Nick Saban lost to Louisiana Monroe, and we tried to do all these things to rationalize those losses, and we haven't had to do that, and it's not natural for us over the last 12 years to have to do this. It's really the first time since Lane Kiffin in 2009 where they almost beat Alabama. They lost the bowl game kind of in a disappointing fashion the same way, but you come out 7-6, better than the year before, look like things moving in the right direction. So, it's when it's the first time in 13 years that we felt this way, I guess it does kind of put it in a different light.
You do still have to end every single one of these conversations like this, though. It all comes down to the wins on the football field. We can be as happy as we want to, about all this stuff happening in the offseason, and it is great. And I love being able to talk about this every single week because it's so refreshing after having done this for the last, this is year 7, if I'm doing my math correctly, that I've been doing this for Tennessee sports. And obviously been a Tennessee fan my entire life. But in terms of covering it and talking about it on shows, after doing it through all of this muck and the mire, it is so refreshing to be able to talk about the things that we are talking about, getting 5-star recruits, sending guys to the league, being impressed with how a coach actually is carrying themselves and things that they do. That is so nice. We still got to win on the football field. There are 9 wins on this schedule, 9 really solid wins. Really, I think there's 10 wins on this upcoming schedule, but one of those, at that point, you're talking only losing to Georgia and Alabama, but who's the cross?
LSU.
Yeah, LSU. So, and I believe
it's in Baton Rouge. Yeah,
it's in Death Valley. So you're talking about at 10 wins, you're winning in Death Valley. So,
which that LSU team,
they're not going to be good.
I don't know what to think about them. They have talent. Like, they recruited really well under Ed Ogeron. Now they've lost some players, but they've got some good quarterbacks. They've got some talented receivers. They might have the best wide receiver in the country in Keyshawn Butte, who was incredible at times. But at the same time, they were a disaster at times last season. And Brian Kelly, is he a good fit down there? Can he win at LSU? He's a strange guy. Anyway, there's so many parallels between him and Butch Jones. It's not funny. I just don't think he's going to work out long term down there. But I don't know. I don't know what to expect.
Yeah, I don't look at Brian Kelly and go like, for sure, he's turning this boat around. He's not definitely. I think it's up in the air. He definitely could.
He had success at Notre Dame when more than any other coach had in recent years there. But he's also such a prickly. He also was like almost fired at Notre Dame that one year. They went 4-8 too. So let's not forget that.
Always, when discussing Notre Dame, you have to handicap it. You have to go but it's Notre Dame.
Yeah.
Let's look at who they play.
They get to handpick their schedule.
Yeah, they play USC and Stanford every year and BYU every year. And then they play a pseudo ACC schedule, and they sort of get to choose who they play. The whole thing is strange.
Yeah,
and so
your best wins against Syracuse. It's not that impressive.
Yeah, the jury's out on exactly how that'll go, very much. And so,
it's a winnable game. Winnable game.
Death Valley is not what it used to be. That is also absolutely true. And so we'll just have to see. But 9 wins is there. 9 wins is there. There's no you're going to be better than that. You're going to be better than that Pittsburgh team. It's at Pittsburgh, but you're going to be better than them. Florida, you're playing at home. There's it's just there, and it's as much as I have loved this offseason, it's all about those wins on the football field. And you have to end these conversations that way. And it makes me nervous because I go, it's going really well, but what if we get into the season and then the things take a turn when the rubber meets the road? We shall see. But with all of that, let's end with this, Zach. So the Tennessee Titans, as I mentioned, I'm wearing my Titans shirt. Big Titans fan. I do have to preface this. If you are a Tennessee fan and not a Titans fan, we are going to end with actual Titans talk because this is A to Z is a Nashville-based outlet. We do a ton of Titans coverage. It's really the bread and butter of A to Z. Frankly, they do such a good job with their Titans coverage. All the boys over there in Nashville. So we're going to end talking about the Titans draft because we wouldn't have if it was just a regular draft, but things went off the rails. And I just want to cover it here because it's my show. If you don't like it, turn it off at this point. But if you do want to hear about the Titans, I'm interested to see what you think because obviously I will give you the Tennessee Titans fan version. And I also know that I'm on the extremely pessimistic, cynical side of fandom as far as Titans fans goes. I know there are a lot of people. When I do I've done Titan specific coverage for A to Z in the past, and I have people that go like, get this guy out of here. He's too negative. So there is that. This draft with AJ Brown getting shipped out, and they basically had to because he was refusing any deal the Titans were putting up. So they had to do something. They were either going to have to essentially fight with him to get him to play this season during his final contract year or ship him out. They just went, we're done, and sent him out to Philadelphia. It was an insane move. And there's a lot of Titans media that are really trying to spin this. They're just like, this could actually be a masterstroke by John Robinson. And he went out and he got AJ Brown 2.0, which, first of all, give me a break. Okay, AJ Brown 2.0. AJ Brown was a revelation. He's the first great receiver we've had since Derek Mason. I mean, way back. And they've tried 1,000 times to get a receiver that's a franchise receiver, and they whiff and they whiff and then and finally they landed on AJ Brown, and he was great. Like, it was not some, oh yeah, AJ's going to be great, and then he was. It wasn't that simple. They tried to get guys like him before and failed. So we'll see about Burks. But the thing that bothered me about it is that the team got worse. That's what I don't like. And it was really an admission from John Robinson when he whiffed on, I don't know if he whiffed. You don't know totally what happened. But he didn't get a quarterback to replace Ryan Tannehill. They didn't try to work some, blockbuster deal for Aaron Rodgers or Russ Wilson or anything like that. They didn't do any of that. Just passed on all of that. And they said, Tannehill's still our guy, which was sort of an admission of, we're not really going to try that hard to finish off this Super Bowl window we potentially have. Then they ship out AJ Brown in his before his contract year. And to me, it's an admission of Robinson going, I tried really hard to build this immediate winner for the Super Bowl window that we have with Derrick Henry, and I failed. That's what I think it was. I think it was him admitting I just couldn't put the pieces together. I just couldn't get the puzzle pieces to fit. We had a great team last year that was the top team in the AFC, and we blew it. And the year before that, we blew it. And we made it to the AFC Championship game, and we didn't win there. But we got, we hit the buzzsaw against Kansas City. And I think it was John Robinson saying, we're going to kind of have to, this isn't the Super Bowl team that we were kind of planning on it being. And I'm sorry. I think, and it's more than it making me like white hot mad. I was mad that first night, but after I saw how they drafted the rest of the time, picking up a quarterback and all that stuff, I went, this is Robinson kind of showing that there really isn't a Super Bowl window, that he doesn't think that that's really what this is. This is not we're going to add Matthew Stafford and make a run for it like the Rams did. This is we're still building kind of a thing. And it makes me sad because last year's team was a quarterback away. You have a better quarterback, that's a Super Bowl team. And that is disappointing. I haven't articulated. This is the first time I've really articulated my thoughts about it. Even I didn't even really do it on Twitter, but that's really, I'm not mad. I'm just disappointed. I would put it that way, maybe. And hey, the sunshine pumping media folks that are really trying to spin it like this is a great thing. I hope it is. I don't think it is, though.
I don't see how it's a great thing. I mean, I guess I can understand them kind of drawing their line and sticking to it. Like, that's fine. A lot of teams do that. Kansas City did it with Tyreek Hill, sent him to the Miami Dolphins. But they have Patrick Mahomes, so that's a little different situation. Yeah. You can find a guy that can work. I was very shocked by the trade because all we'd heard for the last 2 weeks or 3 weeks, however long it's been, was that Mike Vrabel and John Robinson talking about how it wasn't even an option to trade him. And obviously, I've written about AJ Brown possibly being traded a lot over the last month. Most comments are okay, this is manufactured. This is just the media sensationalizing some things. And I get that to an extent. That's kind of a little bit of what happens when you're talking about these scenarios. But after seeing Devontae Adams traded from Green Bay, considering how close he was with Aaron Rodgers, and then all the Aaron Rodgers drama into that, like that was shocking. And then seeing Tyreek Hill traded to the Dolphins from Kansas City when they were openly talking about extending him. That's the only reason they didn't re-sign Tyrann Mathieu was because they needed money to extend Tyreek Hill and extend their left tackle Orlando Brown that they had just traded for. So they were absolutely planning on re-signing him, extending him, and then he decided that he wanted more money, wanted to go to Miami. So that's twice, two superstar receivers. It wasn't going to shock me anything that happened with AJ Brown just because of those two situations. Like this is just the wide receiver world we're living in this offseason. It's probably going to happen with Deebo Samuel or DK Metcalf as well, the longer those situations drag on. What I don't understand is he had 1 year remaining on his rookie deal. Now, I understand he has a little bit of leverage. He can threaten to sit out, but he's on his rookie deal. He was a second-round pick. He's not making – he's making a ton of money compared to, what we're making. But as far as NFL players, he couldn't afford to sit out this season between the fines and everything that would rack up. It's not feasible. So you get through this rough off season. Maybe he holds out into training camp. I don't know. We've seen it tons of times with players. They eventually report. You get through. You try to continue on your Super Bowl path this season. You franchise tag him after the year, and then you trade him. I mean, that's what Green Bay kind of did with Devontae Adams. They tagged him, traded him. If AJ Brown's as good as we all think he is, I mean, you're just going to get a bigger return for him because it's the same situation. The new team can work out a new deal with him. They don't have to pay him the franchise tag. They can set up their salary cap hit however they like. That's what I didn't understand. It didn't have to be done this way.
Yeah. That's exactly it. I think this was a panic move. I really think it was. Because I also think it was almost a panic move in that, according to reports, the New York Jets were like willing to sell their soul for AJ Brown, and the Titans passed. And I don't know if Robinson went like crap, I should have done that. And then, he was just like, well, I'll take what I can get and just get this off my plate, or whatever it was. I don't know, but I agree with you. I don't know why
Burks isn't the guy to do this for. That's my biggest thing. Is if you've got a Garrett Wilson or Chris Olave or one of those other top wide receivers, if you were going to replace him with one of those guys, it makes a little more sense. But Burks is really raw. I mean, he's going to have to learn how to run a route really quick. I feel like maybe I'm wrong. I don't know. We've seen tons of bust and tons of players that I think will be bust end up being good. But I get a real Cordero Patterson vibe from him where he's really athletic. He's really good with the ball in his hands. And maybe that works in college. It worked at Tennessee for Patterson, and then he got to the NFL, and it took almost a decade for the Atlanta Falcons to figure out how to properly use the guy because he can't run routes. And that's been the big knock on Burks. So you're taking a real gamble that this guy's upside is going to pan out. And you're gambling on it to happen this year because all they have, aside from him, is Robert Woods. I mean, they have very little depth at wide receiver right now. And then they took Kyle Phillips later on in the draft. It's a lot of gambling going on by J-Rob.
They got painted into a corner because everything is woulda, coulda, shoulda at this point with the Titans. They should have let Tannehill go and they should have taken Tom Brady. And you wouldn't be in the situation because Brady would have been gone by now. Or whatever Brady would have chosen. You probably, if you didn't win a Super Bowl, you would have had a couple of really good years with him. And then you wouldn't be in this position saddled with this massive contract. You could have gone and really been a true competitor for Rodgers or Wilson and, tried to reset that way. And then you would have had way more money because the 2019 draft class was actually excellent. That was the masterpiece for Robinson, but you're having to pay a bunch of guys all at once. Simmons' contract is coming up and he's really he's probably the best interior defensive lineman in the league within the next couple of years, if not already. And like, you just have some considerations like that. And I don't know if they're just thinking this is going to be the year where we lean on our defense, which is what they did a ton last year too. And that's what they're thinking. And we'll just gut out the offense or whatever it might be. I don't know. But to me, it was an admission by Robinson of just going, this isn't the we're going to capitalize on a Super Bowl window anymore. That's over. This is, we actually have to build around a good core that might be good enough to reach, a core that's probably a playoff team, but that's really it. We're not going to do a full tear down rebuild, but we're going to try to keep the core of it together. But he's kind of trying to like have his cake and eat it too. And it just, to me, so David Poyle with the Predators has done this since they reached the Cup a few years ago in 2017. He's really tried to do that, where he kept this core around, but then shifted pieces around them and blah, blah, blah. And all it really got you is just mediocre years. It just got you kind of middle of the road. You certainly weren't bad. They've never been bad. They haven't missed the playoffs in 8 years or something. But like this season, they were the last team in the Western Conference to make the playoffs this season. So, or they're the last seed in the playoffs. So,
I don't know how you look at this team and think that it got better.
No,
like it certainly
didn't get markedly worse.
No, it's not much worse. I mean, luckily AJ Brown, I mean, it's a big part of their offense, and especially was last year because of the deal with Derrick Henry.
He was the piece that Tannehill leaned on. Tannehill leaned on AJ Brown. Big.
And Tannehill was generally better when he was on the field, even if he wasn't throwing to him. The offense was more efficient whenever he was on the field. I think Tannehill's passer rating was higher just with him on the field. But you can't, you're kind of alluding to it there. The Rams went for it. I mean, they went bold, and a lot of people kind of questioned it at the time. I mean, I didn't really know how I felt about it. I didn't think that it was probably the best move at the time because Stafford, I don't know, maybe I was kind of blinded by Stafford's years in Detroit, but I mean, they saw what they needed to, they felt like they needed to upgrade at quarterback, and they did, and they're Super Bowl champions now because of it.
Yep.
I mean,
that's simple.
That Titans, they were in a tough spot with the huge cap hit with Tannehill. I mean, the dead cap hit was massive, but they could have waited till after June 1st and kind of spread it out over a couple of years, and you can usually make the numbers work. You might end up in cap hell for a couple of years. We've seen it with some teams from time to time, but it would have been worth it for the one season when you go for it, and hopefully it pays off.
I said it to any of the people that are like, you don't mortgage the future for the Super Bowl. Why? I said it. Oh, I'm bad the next year after I won a Super Bowl? Well, I'll wipe my tears with a Super Bowl trophy.
Mm-hmm.
That's ridiculous. And so now I think this is almost worse than, like you said, like cap hit hell. This is just perpetual mediocrity. Perpetual, just like, yeah, you're good, but you're not good enough. It's not going to win you a Super Bowl. You don't have the stars to take you over the top. And
it also blew up everything that John Robinson has kind of like tried to sell to the media and to fans of, we take care of our own players and this and that. Well, it's become very public that they weren't willing to pay AJ Brown. Like, they weren't willing to even get close. And another team was. I don't know if the reports are true where AJ kind of said that they started at $16 million with some incentives. I don't know. That is a lowball offer, but that's kind of where you start, and then you kind of go from there. I mean, the Titans, they had to know when they were preaching that they were going to keep him. They knew where the market was. They knew what it was going to cost to keep him. So they were either lying to fans and to reporters, or they totally misread the situation. Either scenario is a bad look.
I think it's that second one. I think they got had by AJ's agent to a certain extent, where I think underhandedly, but smartly,
Yeah, good for him. He found his value and got it.
Exactly. I don't know if he went when they put up that reported $16 million offer, he went, screw you, and then cut off. If that agent, just the sort of the rumors around the whole thing was that the agent shut it down. And he has an agent who's like notoriously plays hardball and just went, don't even talk to him. Don't say that you just insulted me with that offer, and I'm not going to speak to you until you come correct, something like that. And I think the Titans got, like, Robinson got. That's what I think. He just, he's not infallible. He's whiffed on so many draft picks at this point.
A lot of first rounders.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so, you look at the entire thing, and it's just disappointing because I appreciate the rebuild of everything and how the Titans are now perpetually like a pretty good team. But you were right there. And now I think unless something just crazy miraculous happens, Robert Woods coming back from this injury ends up being a miracle. I don't know. But unless something like that happens, it's going to be Derrick Henry's amazing. Ryan Tannehill kind of stinks. Robert Woods is pretty good. And you made it to the first round of the playoffs and you lost. Like, I think that's just what I think it's going to be. And it's really, that's no fun for anybody. So it's better than being like a 2-win team, I guess. Sure. But at least a 2-win team gets like the first pick in the draft,
Yeah, but how much fun is that if you're the Jaguars and you have the first pick every single year? I mean, that's got to get old at some point, right?
Yeah. I will say at least they're not like the Jaguars ownership. At least I am thankful for that. I'm certainly in a position
or the Jets who always take a defensive player in the top 5, like they're always right there at number 4 or something.
I'm happy that I'm jaded by the fact that the Titans have been good for a few years now. Like I'm glad that I can take a step back and be like, well, at least we're not them. That's nice. We're past that point. That's good. And our problems are the Super Bowl window is closed and not we won 2 games last year.
Real quick before we finish, what did you think of Mike Vrabel's reaction on draft night? Because he looked like he'd been through it. Like he looked so conflicted. He said the right words, but he did not. His facial expressions did not match up with what he was saying.
I just think it's exactly what I said. It was him and Robinson getting smacked with reality, being like, it's not going to be easy to do this, to build this Super Bowl team. They thought they were living on easy street, and then it just didn't. They made this terrible Todd Downing's garbage, the offensive coordinator, and then they kept him around. I mean, it's their own arrogance to a certain extent that's keeping things mediocre. You have some moves in the past that you regret, some draft picks that were terrible, like all these things, and it's finally the chickens are really coming home to roost, where you got to the point where it was, you're either going to take the turn into being a Super Bowl team or you're going to take the turn back down the hill. And they took the turn back down the hill, I think. In my analysis of the situation, it was them looking and going, this is not how we wanted this to go. It was that. And again, I've been through the really lean years with the Titans, so I'm not necessarily angry. I'm just sad. That's all. Hey, it's not a 2-win season, but will we ever make a Super Bowl? I don't know. So there you go. For anybody who listens to this show and is a Titans fan, there's my take.
Little bonus for everybody.
Yeah, and otherwise, I am sorry to Tennessee fans that don't care. Maybe you do care. I don't know. But there's that. Thanks to everybody for listening. Charlie Burris, Zach Ragan, at Charlie_Burris, at Zach TNT on Twitter, at A to Z Sports, Twitter, Instagram, A to Z Sports.com, Facebook.com/A to Z Sports Nashville. And YouTube, type in A to Z Sports on YouTube and subscribe to the channel there, and you can see our beautiful faces if that is something that you would like to do. A to Z Sports Podcast Network feed, Apple, Spotify. I think that's the bulk of it there. This has been another long episode. And otherwise, hopefully, I'm excited to see what recruit commits next week for our show. I'm on pins and needles, so we'll talk about that when it comes. But otherwise, I think that's it. We'll talk to y'all next week.
See you guys later.
Get it. Get it.